Hey guys, it's your favorite gold miner, prospector, and geologist, Jeff Williams. And today, I'm gonna take you around some of these old mines, teach you some geology, and look for some gold. So let's get into it. Oh, look at this thing. Still has the shiv wheel on it. And you can see where they've reinforced it with angle iron to keep it from falling over. They use a shaft sinking bucket, just like we have on our drift. It dumps here, and you can see where the skip bucket sits here when they dump. And then of course right here is where the mine car would be. And based on the track orientation, you can go out this way to a small pilot mill, go that way to the mine dump. It looks like somebody retroed this back in the 80s because they were mining. They put a concrete collar in, and it's in good shape. And look at this vent pipe. So they're using this conduit as vent pipe, and then of course that's for the airline for the drills. Timber looks rotted. See that? Then you can see the vinyl vent tube in there right there. But there's the other one right there. Now let's see if we can take a look in there. This ladder looks pretty raggedy up here on the collar. Oh yeah. It's not in bad shape. It looks like it dips down maybe 200 feet. It's not in bad shape at all. The ladder's missing though. But you can see where the ladder's here. Then you got ladder on the other side. But then I don't see any ladder at all down there. You can see the hanging bolts. And then there's the rail for the skip bucket. Now when you're around these old mines like this, look at areas where they might have dumped some of the ore. Because you can see ore all over the place here where the skip bucket would come up and then dump. See this? Look. But it's all over the place. Remember what I told you about high grade, low grade piles? Look for them outside, you'll see them. Here's one right here. This is definitely ore. I can tell just by looking at the characteristics of it. Now the ore that's located here is mostly brecciated quartz. It's re-cemented together with a fine grain mass. Now inside that grain mass, you have iron, epidote, and hematite, and that's what's giving it its red staining. The gold is going to be located in the fine grain mass, not these large clasts of quartz. You can see where all this quartz has been broken up, which is referred to as brecciation, and then it's been re-cemented back together. It's always that fine grain mass that's going to have your mineral assemblages in it, if any at all. And I've got a lot of stockworks and ladder veins running all throughout this country rock. Last report I saw on this mine, the ore was averaging about 2 ounces per ton. And like I said, it's mostly in silicified replacement of calcite by quartz. This is all ore. I mean, just look at this stuff. It's a no-brainer. Just gobs and gobs of ore. Nice thing about this ore is there's very little, if no, sulfides in the mix. And that's great. It's all oxidized out. Now I'm sure once you get past the water table, that's gonna change. See their homemade forge? They would run air in through here, and then you can see the holes drilled right in here. And the air would come up, and this whole thing would be filled with coal. They would superheat that coal, then they could stick their drill steel in here, heat it up, and then resharpen their drill steel. And as I've told you in the past, every mine has got to have a forge somewhere on site because you got to keep that drill steel sharp. And you ain't drilling no holes for dynamite with dull drill steel. More evidence that this was retroed back in the 80s. Can't really make out what that says on the concrete slab. If you can, let me know. Oh, and there's dog prints, so he must have had a dog. You got Pat, that must be his dog, and that looks like Harold. I got Jim, 1978. Here's the slab for the hoisting works. Looks like I had an old style hoist here. These guys were tough as nails, I tell you.
Miles away from any established trail, hidden in the rugged terrain of Arizona's mountains, stood the last of the great mining headframes. Built in the 1890s, it was a testament to the determination of those who sought fortune in the unforgiving desert. This headframe, known as the Sentinel, was a lone guardian of a bygone era, overseeing abandoned tunnels that once teemed with miners that drilled and blasted out tons of barren rock for that elusive gold. For over 100 years, the Sentinel evaded time's grasp and has stood as a testament of a time long gone to history. A new wave of development swept through Arizona, and with it came the decision to remove these aging structures. The Sentinel was one of only a few headframes that was not lost to time and never dismantled for its timber and steel. It stands as a reminder of an era where the pursuit of gold drove men to feats of great engineering and great accomplishments.
Look at that. I got another fissure-filled vein structure here, but unfortunately, it pinches, and that's no bueno. I can see a lot of tiny veinlets in here. Don't see a lot of stockworks, but there's the vein right there, what's left of it. See some hematite in there. I've got some chloritic andesite. Probably got epidote with it since they like to travel together. Now look at this andesite. Do you see it? This is the chloritic andesite. It's green, obviously, because of the chlorite and epidote. Do you see how it's all broken up? This is referred to as breccia. You know that. And the reason why it's this way is because when this fault was being pushed apart by these fluids, it was fracturing and it was cracking. And then the infill, which is the fluids, would crystallize and re-cement these fragments back together. So what's happening is, and this is very common when you have hydrothermal fracturing of the original fault system, because faults originally aren't this wide. They're usually a little narrower, because faults usually start off as small little teeny fissures. Just enough space for these fluids to get into. When they get inside these little tiny fissures and fractures, they start to hydraulic it apart, especially if there's any type of fault movement. They call it fault valving. So what's happening is down below in the lithosphere, there's so much hydrothermal pressure, fluid pressure, and it's just waiting. And so when a fracture opens up, then the fluids go rushing up. And that pressure can be so intense, it'll literally fracture the rock and start spreading that fault open. Then, once it's sealed up, the process starts again. They refer to it as crack and seal. And you're gonna see multi-generational fractures and sealing, and it's gonna be imprinted upon itself over and over again as this fault is widened out of many generations of hydrothermal emplacement. And in the process, the hydrothermal fluids begin to cool, they begin to crystallize, and if there's any mineral assemblages that are inside of these fluids, they will also start to precipitate out at the same time based on pressure, temperature, and pH balance. That's why you have a lot of fracturing going on in one location. And you can see that here too. You can see this beautiful silica vein. It's obviously barren. If there was any minerals in it, they've been leached out. You can see where this has been fractured before, and you can see I have multiple generations based off of banding. Then you've got infill re-solidifying it, and you got multi-generations coming through here, and this is only obvious. See that little tiny fissure right there? So this would be one episode, this would be another one, and I'm sure if I look closer I could find more. And you're also going to get veins that cut across this way. It's very common to see silica veins cutting across themselves because it's multi-generational. And the reason why that is because the rock is being subjected to extreme pressures, and fracturing can take place based on the orientation of that pressure. So you can have what's called a ladder vein. It looks like a ladder. It's where you have veins intersecting at 90 degrees. There's heavy mineralization in there. Look at those intersections because that's going to be your high grade areas to look for on these epithermals. Now, if I had to guess, this is one of the original outcroppings right here that they must have found. This is fissure-filled vein structure. You can see where this is probably what it looked like originally, a small, tiny fissure in the rock, which is of course chloritic andesite. We got other fissures here, and as it begins to crack and split, the fluids rush in. See that? It's a typical example right there. And sometimes the smaller veins here can be richer than the fatter veins. Another good example of stockworks, see that? And you can see the hematite in there. That's what got them all excited when they came up here. You have multi-generational infill going on in this particular fissure. You see that? And then off to the side, you've got most of these tiny, tiny veinlets coming off at a 45, cutting across the vein structure this way. What's going on here is you're going to get lateral fractures because of this infill, which is slowly hydraulicking the basement rock apart. And right here, you see these ladder veins? See that? The way they're cutting at a 90-degree angle? These are tiny, tiny little veinlets. Here's a good spot where they did a small little cross cut to see if there's any value in here. What they'll do most of the time is they'll get up underneath the vein, where the minerals haven't leached out yet. And then they'll drive in an exploratory, which usually turns out to be the haulage adit. And then when they intersect the vein, whether they're running parallel with it, which is also referred to as a drift, or if they cut across it, which is called a crosscut, they'll get into that vein and then they'll start working up. If they find out that there's values in the vein still going down, they'll drop a shaft directly into it called a winze. And they'll drop that in, they'll go down 100 feet, they'll run parallel to the vein and work up, stope that out. Remember, miners always use gravity to their advantage because it's easier for rock to fall down than it is to fall up. And this is my point right here. See the vein? And right here you've got an incline shaft that follows the same angle or dip of the vein. Like I said, they'll follow it all the way down, get down to 100 feet. And then what they'll do is they'll run a drift out this way and this way. All right, I got another shaft here. This one's got an interesting design to it. Now, first things first, right next to the shaft, which is right over here, is this guy right here. That is an ore bin, and that is always a good sign to see when you're out looking at these old mines. And there's two reasons for that. One, it means that they found enough gold ore, since we're in a gold producing district, to warrant them building that big old ore bin and having it stored and then hauled to a mill for processing. The second thing is if they left anything in there, guess who's gonna come in behind there and pick it up? Me and you, and that's what you should be doing too. If you look inside of the ore bin, what do you see? That's right, I've got a nice collection of material still hung up on the corners down there. I'm gonna go down there and sample that. I've got 3 veins. I don't know if you can see them because they're kind of hidden. I've got one there, see it? I got another long vein right there running up the side of the hill. And then I got a third one right there. And if you look across the ridge, you'll see a 4th vein right there. I know the sun's in the way, but there's a 4th one right there, and you can see where they were trying to get in underneath it down there. Anytime you have fault system, chances are you're gonna have smaller faults that are parallel to it. And what you need to do is you need to look for them. Some of them are gonna be obvious, some of them are gonna be hidden. And the best way to find them, the hidden ones, is by using a drone. Because using a drone, you can do an aerial survey and you can see things that are obvious from the air that you couldn't from the ground. And that's what we do all the time. We'll fly over an area several times. I'll go back, I'll review the film, and I'll see if I can see even the slightest amount of outcropping. Because some of these veins are still mere inches under the surface. And those are the ones that the old timers missed, and those are the ones that I'm looking for. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are gonna say, oh, there's no more gold, Jeff, it's all been taken and blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna tell you right now, I personally have seen a vein that was 10 inches under the surface and it assayed out at 10 ounce per ton and the gold was visible. Right here. Now I know there's not much in it, but that proves my point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I had to guess, there's a 6th one hiding around here somewhere. All right, we'll do the unofficial rock test. Say maybe 100 foot, a little over 100 foot. Now the interesting thing about this setup is that they didn't drop the shaft on top of the vein itself. They dropped it in between these veins. And if I had to guess, they ran cross cuts out in both directions to get that one, and that one. And that one on the hill looks the most profitable. Now real quick, I want to show you this contrast in petrology or lithology, depending on how old you are, because they changed the terminology. Here I've got chloritic andesite, you see that? We come over here, and all of a sudden, you notice the color difference? It changes drastically. That's because I have a rhyolitic intrusion here. This is an actual intrusion of rhyolite, right here, this whole system right here. And if you get an aerial view, like I told you, you'll see that This is a huge rhyolitic dike that is cutting through this green andesite, and those silicified zones are inside of that rhyolite.
In the Oatman district, the remnants of an ancient geological drama lay etched in the rocks. Rhyolite dikes and sills, products of a time when the Earth's crust was more active, intruded the older chloritic andesite, creating a lattice of silicified veins. These veins, rich in quartz, calcite, and adularia, traced the pathways of ancient hydrothermal fluids. The gold-bearing quartz veins of Oatman were a geological enigma. Unlike typical epithermal deposits in the western United States, these veins were almost devoid of base metal minerals. Their extremely low pyrite and silver content baffled those who studied them, offering a unique case study in the formation of mineral deposits. As explorers and miners worked these veins, they felt a connection to the Earth's past, unearthing treasures not just of material wealth, but of geological knowledge.
Isn't that amazing? See this? All the way down, all the way across. Here, here. Oh look, there's a drill hole by a burley. Here, all the way up. See that? Oh, this is rhyolitic. Now, had that been alteration zones, it would have been evident because there would have been a transitional zone between the original host rock, which is the chloritic andesite, and the new altered rock. But there's not. There's one definitive line there. And when you look at it with a hand lens, you can actually see the telltale signs of this being rhyolite. So you have fissure-filling vein structures here. Of course, you have multi-generational systems. And then you have these halos that are on the outside of the infill, which are called alteration zones. Remember, you've got an alteration zone and you've got infill. There's a huge difference between the two. You're looking for infill. See the stoles? Beautiful looking stoles. Of course, that's some very, very soft rock. You can see the vein that they're chasing, which is about 6 feet wide. And you can see it. Here's the footwall. And then you can see over here the hanging wall. Now you can see that there's distinct boiling activity going on in here on the hanging wall, which is a no-brainer, and not so much over here on the footwall. And you can see where the fault's been moving. This is an active fault here, and you can see the striations in the fault gouge, which are called slicken sides. You see that? I don't know if my light's too bright. There. All those little grooves or striations is from where this fault has been moving. And this clayous material that you see here is referred to as fault gouge. And the part that they're most interested in is that centerpiece right in the middle there, where you see all the iron staining, and then you can see where it starts to dissipate, and it's not so well defined, but you can see how soft this altered rock is on the outer edge. Now this is good looking material, but look at how soft it is. Remember, good ore, oh, there's some nice limonite right there. Good ore is always soft and crumbly and brittle because it's been so heavily altered that the rock is completely changed to some degree that it's no longer holding its structure. So you can literally dig at it with your finger. And I want that piece right there. Oh yeah, that one's coming down. There's gonna be situations where you get into some of these older abandoned mines and you're going in there to high grade some of the rich pockets, and you're gonna start attacking something like this. You better be very careful and aware of what's above your head, because this stuff is extremely brittle and fractured, and it's ready to drop. So just be aware of that. Heavily altered ore is very, very soft and crumbly. You can see that they have an ore chute down there, but it's plugged up with debris, and of course, pack rat is living down there now. And they have this V pattern to where all the ore would funnel down into the ore chute and then drop all the way down further to be hauled up to the top of that shaft. Look at this. Beautiful, well-defined fault right through here. Do you see it? And see this huge silica quartz vein right up against it. This thing was only a tiny, tiny little fissure like that as it started off. And because of a process called fault valving, multi-generational fluids have come through here, and they've shot through, and they've injected, and they've fractured the quartz, and they've broken it up, and they've re-cemented it. And you can see boiling here, all through here. You can see all these different generations going on. You have all this imprinting going on over the top, new veins on top of old veins. Over the course of millions of years, you have all these different vein structures, and they can go in different directions based on structural control. So remember, it's always about structure. That's what controls where these fluids go, and that determines where these veins will show up. And that's what you need to know if you're going to be in the field looking for these things, especially new veins. You have to understand the basics. Now, under a hand lens, this stuff exhibits all the qualities that you're looking for gold deposition in this area. I've got oxidation zones we can commonly refer to as limonite. It's a general term. You've got a few silical stringers running through there. You've got some albite running through there. And of course, you've got little tiny inclusions of hematite that are in there, and magnetites. And I'll take this one back and crush it and see if there's anything in it. But for right now, we're getting in that ore bin and I'm pulling samples. All right, I got a question for you guys out there. Maybe you can answer it for me. Out of all the locations we've been to in Arizona, 90% of the shafts have gates on top of them, back gates, a BLM put on them. Are you gonna tell me they forgot this one? I've seen 3 shafts today and none of them have gates on them, and they're really easy to drive to. So how come these don't have back gates on them and the other ones do? See how they got these hanging bolts holding this ore bin together? Because when this thing is fully loaded, oh man, it's heavy and it's gonna try to come apart. See that? And of course they got it lined with metal because the rocks are gonna chew it up. You can see where they've already chewed a hole through it right there. So they use hanging bolts to hold this whole thing together, or else the weight of it would just split it apart. Oh, and while we're on the subject, I want to show you what a real 2x6 looks like. Are you ready? See that? That's at least 2 inches apart, 6 inches wide. That's a real 2x6, not this Home Depot stuff. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to argue with me and say, oh, Jeff, that's because of planing and resurfacing and drying. Well, then just cut it wider when you start off. That way, when you do the process, it comes out to a real 2x4. You see that in the corner? That old pair of sunglasses. Right there. Oh, yeah, I'm going to collect up some of this ore. Now, what I'll do is I'll take it back to the house and crush it all up. Let's see if there's any value in it. If there is, I'll come back. That's the fun part about sampling. And remember, sampling can take weeks, months, sometimes years. I know we spent a long time trying to figure out where to sink the shaft for our drift mine. Years, literally. But you see what happened, it paid off. All right, let me get these samples real quick. Now, if you got any kind of value out of this video, I want you to smash that like button. Smash it hard. And if you're not currently subscribed, go ahead and subscribe now, because I guarantee you're gonna learn more in just a few minutes on my channel than you will taking a whole semester in college. And if you're currently subscribed, go ahead and make sure you still are subscribed, because YouTube has a way of wiping out a lot of my subscribers along on other channels as well. And I don't know why they do that, but they do. So make sure you're still subscribed to me, and I'll see you on the next video.